Chris in New Orleans, Oklahoma City. Where are we getting paid?
All right, well, welcome everyone. We'll go ahead and get the meeting started at 6:05 for the June 4th board meeting. We'll have the, go ahead and join us with the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A moment of silence. All right, thank you. All right, so the first thing on the agenda is approval of the agenda. I need a motion for the approval.
I will make a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, do we have any public comment?
Nope.
No
All
public.
right, no public, no. All right, now we need the approval for the minutes. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the APA board minutes from May 7th as presented.
I'll second that motion.
Do we have any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So we have our minutes from our last meeting approved, and now we have the approval of the CEO report. I'd like to have a motion for the CEO report.
Make a motion that we approve the May 2024 CEO report as presented.
I'll second that.
All right, do we have any discussion? Any questions?
Do you want to ask your
Yep.
interesting question?
I do have an interesting question.
Yeah.
I was looking at the various numbers from the beginning of the year to the end of the year at the differences. We've, there's always that little bit of fluctuation, but it seems like that between the freshmen and the sophomores have been our largest jump, or I'm sorry, the sophomores and the juniors, but the sophomores, we had a huge difference from the start of the year with 75 in person, 10 virtual, to 52 and 21. Is that a common, given the age and?
Given the structure of APA, yes, especially after second semester is when we start to see a lower amount of sophomores.
Okay.
Because of the extra graduation requirements, because of some of the rigor of our classes and the things that they just have to do. That's typically when we start seeing an exit. So if you look like at the freshmen, right now it looks like we've got 94 of them.
Yes.
Our average graduating class is typically between 50 and 58 members, and that's just, we've had this discussion for a long time about the pyramid of enrollment because, this is part of when we consolidated 9 years ago with the elementary 5th grade coming over here. We actually had, as Commandant Guillaume was exiting, there were a couple positions that had been cut. And we'd basically taken our middle school and made it smaller because funding and all that. But we start with 60 or 66 kindergarten through 5th grade. And then we were trying to feed it up to 80, 88 in middle school, and that just wasn't working because you can't funnel them that way. And so we've been able in the last several years to expand that back out. So now we're getting between 80 or so in that middle group. But it has always been, especially as we get up to the junior year, senior year, that the kiddos that just haven't been able to get the academics going, it's just getting harder on them. So that's where a lot of it, you'll notice also if you look at this month, juniors to seniors, there is a change where it looks like the senior class grew and the junior class got a little bit smaller, those are early grads, so they get moved
okay.
up grade. But say that's typically kind of where we're at. Angie, do you have any other comment on kind of 10th graders, why that's that?
No, that is the biggest reason why they're just not kicking in and doing what they need to do, so they have to go somewhere else to make sure that they get that diploma.
Yeah, and that's really because of the charter and because of the APA. The APA diploma several credits higher than what the state requires. Foreign language is one of them that seems to be kind of a sticking point for some kiddos. They either don't want to participate kind of in that coursework, or it's just a little more challenging. We provide the supports and all those things as much as we can, but it's
Right.
still a graduation requirement.
Okay.
But,
We did have about half a dozen kids not come back second semester due to their lack of attendance anyway.
yeah.
Well, and that's where I did see that from the time frame of Christmas break. November, December is when a lot of that just kind of went. So that's where I was kind of
So it sounds like
assuming on some of that, but
you may see that pattern every year.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
typically do. Honestly, our junior class enrollment has been higher this year than it is on a typical year. And I think that that's probably going to continue kind of being at that higher part because the kids that are staying with us with kind of the academic programming and interventions we have in place with all the early identifiers, right? As well as the new opportunities with D26 and some of our dual credit opportunities, it's giving them more motivation, but we shall see. I will, with that note, I will give a shout out to Taryn Justice, who just got her vet tech certification through D26. So
nice.
good job to Taryn Justice.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sorry, that made me think of that. So might as well give her a public shout out.
Absolutely.
But also, you guys should know that enrollment now lasts all year long. It does not stop.
Right.
I mean, used to, you would see a decline. I would slow down in October when I'd be able to get caught up. In October, I still was enrolling 5, 6, 7 kids a week,
Yeah.
and that kept up through April.
Yeah, and we had people, even in May that were wanting to enroll, or we had someone contact us in the last week of school wanting to enroll so that they could come to summer school and start credit recovery and enroll next year, or try to get maybe their diploma knocked out this summer. I'm not quite sure how that went, but I don't know that continued because of our actual diploma. I don't think that conversation, I think it was when you were out, your first time, that trip. So I don't know, it's been an interesting enrollment year.
We did enroll an 8th grader the last day of school, but he was a former student.
Yeah.
Went to go live with dad for a year, that didn't work out.
Yeah.
So we did enroll him the last day of school so that he could attend summer school, try to get caught back up, so hopefully he does get to go be a freshman next year.
Oh, good.
Is the incoming, which is more, the incoming or the outgoing, or is it sort of an equal
You can look
wash?
at the numbers down at the bottom, you will see that it is basically a wash.
Yeah,
So I noticed, yeah.
We're used to, we would always end up with at least 20 kids less at the end of the school
There
year.
used to be a
Yeah,
spike.
that was, very
Yeah.
typical.
Now it's constant.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was the first year that I noticed that the total number didn't change a whole lot.
Yeah.
And it didn't last 2 years.
Yeah.
That's good, because then we don't lose as much those last 3 months on our state tuition.
Well, and I
So-
put up actually under my ADM because I noticed the trend too, and I thought this is standing out a little bit. Where even with our ADM average, it was 89 or 83 or 839.5, and our monthly enrollment average was 838.2. So to be right, basically spot on, within a give or take a kid and arm of a kid, I guess. That's pretty steady for everything. So it's pretty consistent, but that segues also into that budget part where, I think our numbers pretty much right where we need to be.
Yep.
Looks like we're missing part of the CEO report. I've got page 1 and page 3, and that's it. So it looks like we're missing part of that.
You don't have
Oh.
that on the back of page one?
Nope.
No. And I don't have
Well, you
anything.
had to
I say
have,
so
you
then
had
they're
to
missing
subscribe to the expanded
Yeah.
version of the board.
And then is there a page 4?
Yeah, I can print to it.
Is there a page 4?
I would say it doesn't copy, it's just
Oh.
print. No, I got
I was
this.
gonna say,
You just need to print page 2.
it
And
does
like,
end.
it looks like it ends weird.
Yeah, there's a page 4 as well.
Okay.
Hey, technology, it's great and not always great.
I was printing to 2 different printers when I do this.
No.
But sometimes I forget to print them.
While we're talking about enrollment trends, I think we had 53 that graduated Saturday. Was that correct number? I believe I heard.
I think it's 50.
50, okay, 50. I found it to be a very interesting mix. What I was mostly focused on was what they were planning on doing. And it sounded like there was a lot of, okay, thank you.
That one, I print
Yeah,
page
page
2
4.
and 4.
While we're passing stuff out, let me get my script, I call it. I try to read from that. There, I think everybody has that copy here. Yeah, it seemed like maybe there was more what you would think of as trade school or vocational occupations, electricians, and I personally think that's good because,
Thank you.
there's many roads to success, and they all don't need a 4-year degree from an expensive college.
Thank you.
I will point out that one of those graduates
This is page 2 again. I don't have
he's
page 4.
already making $80,000
Really?
over the last year. Part of him being in our virtual academy was so that he could work because he had an apprenticeship opportunity that if he continued to go to high school, get knocked that out, they were going to go ahead and just get him started in his programming. And so he's already making a really nice salary. He did high school in 3 years, and that opportunity is what made him graduate, because he wasn't that interested in getting a high school diploma because,
Thank you.
but thankfully, like a lot of industries are saying, hey, let's get that, at least that part. But yeah, it's been an interesting mix. We're seeing more of it just because of how expansive like the trades opportunities are. There's a lot of internships, a lot of paid apprenticeships now. Having the partnership with D26, pretty much any of our kids that go there are going to walk away with some kind of certification. We have, I think we now have 3 that have walked with an associate's degree on top of their high school diploma. So Paris Warner is one of them. She's one of our original 5, and so she got that. Gavin Mitchell, who's currently a junior, got his legal certificate, or legal long-term certificate this May, and will get his associates in December. So the opportunities combining all of these programs together are really, I think, lending itself to that. I found this graduating class was also interesting because there was a lot of teachers. They're going to be teachers, and
I noticed that,
so I'm
yeah.
like, all right, 4 years from now, I know what content area you're going into. But that's also, we have a really strong cadet teaching program here. And so a lot of them have been doing it since they were freshmen or sophomores. And so they go to the elementary, they work in classrooms, they come here. It just depends on kind of what teacher needs the help or what their interest is. So,
No, that's good. I think the little kids like to interact with the big kids.
oh, they love them.
Yeah. So,
They love them a lot.
the other thing I noticed, I only counted one that was entering military, although Richard told me, no, there were 2.
There's 2.
I missed one. That seems a little lower than normal. I don't know if you can read anything into that.
It just depends on kind of the personality of that class. Most of the class of 2024, I don't think that military future would really be kind of where they're going to be the most successful. I know because Julian and Sophia are both guard. They're Georgias. I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, this class, some of them have current active service members in their family. One of our graduates, his sister graduated more than 4 years ago. Gracie Diltz.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's
Staff sergeant.
yeah.
Staff Sergeant Diltz.
Staff Sergeant Diltz is excelling in the Air Force and moving up very quickly. She's currently stationed in Montana, and her brother, that is not a fit for him at all.
No.
So we see kind of the ebbs and flows of it. But
So we don't think we're seeing a lower trend due to the fact that we were not able to provide staffing for junior ROTC, or Air Force was not.
I don't really think so. I mean, I don't, especially because it's how well we know the class of 2024. Like if we went through that list, right? I mean, your kiddo was there.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you're a veteran, but I don't know that he's going to be jumping up anytime soon, right?
No interest. I've tried.
Yeah. So I think that's just going to be kind of the nature of how it goes. Also, I would say in the past, let's say 10 years ago, a lot of our kids that were going into the military, it was more for the military benefits to be able to afford to go to college or get the training to be able to go into that trade that they want. But kind of that has reversed a little bit on some of that too. So we also, and this was a thing that I was talking or emailing back and forth with Ball State, I would really love to see the year or two after high school, because we always have kids that they take a gap year or they leave, they go to college, and then they end up enlisting because they're like, no, I need that structure, I need X, Y, and Z. But there's not really a data tracking point on that yet, so I'm curious about that.
I thought the graduation went very well, and
Yeah, absolutely.
both of the faculty speakers, I thought, did an excellent job. The senior sponsor was, I thought I was laughing at all of his jokes. I thought they were hilarious myself. But yeah, he's the music teacher, right?
Yeah, he was our choir guy, and I was dying laughing that ChatGPT wrote us a graduation.
I recorded that because I thought it was going to be pretty good, so I
Yeah.
chose to record that.
Well, and I mean, it's the big struggle in education right now, right? Because AI existed, and now all of a sudden it just went,
Yeah.
and you cannot put that back in the box, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny, and it kind of ages me a little bit, right? When Google was coming out and all that, it was like they're cheating, being able to research and use the Google machine for all that. And so we've already had a few teachers like, well, now AI, I'm like, you can't block AI. How do you block a thing that can reason and find a way around the block?
Right.
So we're going to have to learn to teach them to use it for good, and then use all of our AI checkers that we have built into our programming. Turnitin.com, and those things
Yep.
are there for a reason.
Yep.
And I had to do research papers with encyclopedias that were as old as I was.
Well, yes, that's
Hmm.
Yes, Mom bought them the year I was born, and she would not take me to the library because we had encyclopedias, right?
That's fine. I mean, they don't. It's not like those books get updated every year anyway.
Yeah, no, they don't.
The capabilities of AI, what it's leading to, is pretty amazing. It's something I work on at work all the time, and I have a couple of projects right now that we're using AI, and we routinely use ChatGPT for writing code. So it's amazing. But like you said, if used properly, it's an amazing tool that can make you much more efficient and do a much better job. But if you use it incorrectly, there's a real downside. But
Yeah.
toothpaste is not going back on the tube on that one. It's
Oh,
here to
no,
stay.
no.
Is there an AI that will do treasurer's reports, I wonder?
Actually, yes.
Oh, it looks like that.
I was gonna say, we just upgraded our Qualtrics, which it's not gone live yet, but I'm going to be able to upload our student data and
Yeah.
just say, which students need math intervention? And it's just going to give me a list. Or
Yeah.
which students currently have a 75% attendance rate? There you go. So I don't know what I'm going to do with my time not being pouring through spreadsheets to try to find all of that or do all my sorts, my color coding, because it's going to take care of it. And annoyed with that, but they demoed it where you can tell it, hey, I need to write a professional email about these points, da 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 da. So it writes it, and then you say, I need you to turn that to Gen Z. And so then it just changes all the terminology. And so for us,
Oh, wow.
you know, if we take a letter that we've written, you know, for our families that is at this, we can change it to be more kid-friendly or, you know, with different languages or all of that stuff. Like, whew, that's a lot of power.
Yeah.
It's a lot of amazing possibilities, but also something that we need to make sure our kids know how to use safely and with integrity and not copying and paste, because if you use whereas and I ask you to use that in your own sentence verbally,
Yeah.
why would I say that? It's in your paper. So,
By the way, not to get off on a tangent because it's very easy for me to get off on one with AI stuff.
Oh, yeah.
It fascinates me. But earlier this year, I did a presentation at a professional conference about using data analysis with ChatGPT. If you ever want me to bring up any of the highlights of that, I'd be happy to do it. It's, I can show you some stuff that you probably would literally not believe because, for one thing, you can see and interpret images. You can have a whiteboard all drawn out and take a picture, give it to ChatGPT, and you say summarize what this is, and it'll write everything out and stuff. And you can stuff like that you can't even believe is possible.
Well, right.
Full data modeling. Give it a data set, have it make predictions.
There's your go-to.
Anyways.
my new best friend, Ryan. We're gonna have lots of fun. That means less chart paper.
Yeah, I'll be happy to work with you.
Hey, thanks.
It's something I spend a lot of time with that work actually right now. So.
Oh, boy, I'm falling further and further behind on the
That's all right,
tech
Dave.
curve.
You're relevant because you can actually tell us. if
My
it's
brother
wrong.
says that Stone Age headhunters in New Guinea are more tech savvy than I, so I don't know. No hope for me, I guess.
Me neither.
All right.
Can I ask, when some of these people, like, are they just not, the resignations, are they just not coming back in the fall?
Correct.
Because I knew this one was doing the summer school.
Yeah, the last day will be for that one, June 21st, after summer school.
Were there any unusual surprises? There was a few names that kind of surprised me on that list, because they've been here a long while.
But, yeah.
So there's always, you know, one or two that kind of stands out, and I won't say necessarily surprises because I know people's life circumstances and what they've been kind of exploring or looking through. But I could see that it would be there. Yeah. So the top one for Dr. Nolik, she is going to be able to go to Rushville and be a curriculum director there at the corporation level. So that's just professional growth and kind of more of her dream to get to go that way. It's a bigger environment, that type of thing. She'll have more schools to work with. Cassie, some of that is just I think she's going back to the classroom. And that's going to, I think, be down maybe in Lawrence. So disappointing because, you know, love her.
I don't know
She's
that
been with
we've
us for a
ever-
while in
Really
multiple
good.
capacities, but
I don't know that we've ever collected this statistic. I think, wouldn't it be safe to say that we do have a fairly high percentage of our teachers that are coming in from another county, which means long distance? So therefore, I mean, you know, all things being relatively equal or even better for them if you can get closer to home.
yeah. And
And that doesn't necessarily reflect that we're not taking care of our employees either, you know, if anyone tries to draw that conclusion, because,
yeah.
you know, I don't know.
Well, and the distance is a thing. Inflation has been a big
That's a huge
challenge,
thing right
obviously,
now.
for everybody. And, you know, for us, the starting salary for the teachers, when they passed that law, we kicked it in 2 years before we were supposed to. Actually, charters were exempt from that because they know we don't get the same amount of funding, but we said, no, we're going to do that, right? We made that commitment. And so that put us competitive with everybody for a 3-year period. But now I think Muncie Community Schools is at 50 for starting. I think Yorktown's at 51, or swap those. One is the one and one's the other. I think ACS may have just bumped theirs possibly up to close to 48, I think.
Mhm.
And so with the increases and the funding and all that, right, it's still the have and the have-nots.
Mhm.
And when, 4 years ago, we started teachers off around 35, or probably 6 years ago.
33.5, I think, was the low end.
Yeah, 33.5, and always trying to find ways around that. And other schools were starting at 40. Well, now the state's trying to shore that up and get everybody to start at 40, which then makes everybody else be able to go higher. And so I think we're going to continue seeing that. Being an educator in the last 4 years has been pretty tough. We are seeing a larger increase than we've ever seen in people that are just leaving. So some of the elementary teachers, we lost one, we had 4 babies, so that has caused some challenges, but some life choices where, it's just, I don't want to go to another school. If I was going to stay in education, I'd stay at APA, but it's too much for me now. So I've tried to be respectful of that. We've had some retirements this year as well, and just kind of working through it.
Yeah.
It's an interesting day to be an educator.
I know the meetings recently, there was a lot of talk about, strategies that the board has been involved with over the years, and I know that's always been something we've grappled with from day one for me anyhow on the board was, how do we be competitive? And I think the feeling, at least at the beginning, was that we recognize that being a charter, public charter, we're not going to be able to compete with everybody, including perhaps our own Anderson community schools, at least at the high end. But then we felt like we offered a lot that you might not be able to get in many of the public schools, which is a better, we have a little bit of leverage because we're a school of choice. And I know Don Volk, gentleman locally here that has retired, but he's continuing to sub in his retirement years. He told me, he said, I tell everybody that you really ought to come sub at APA because they have good kids and they have structure and they're I don't know, law and order, I don't know if that's the right term, but it's a good place. So that, I believe, has to count for something. But then when you look at the price of groceries and cars and everything, that can only compensate so much.
Yeah, and that's the big struggle because we do a lot of the value added, right? Where we try to get them as many resources as they can in their classrooms. We brought in the maker spaces. We write a lot of grants, and here we'll send you to PBL training. We'll try to do those things. But yeah, at the end of the day, you got to buy groceries, or your rent just got doubled. I have one teacher right now who is having to look because her rent got doubled, and she got a 2-month notice that, hey, this is what's happening, and you can either leave and not have a place to go move in, or you can just pay it. And for us, it's pretty awful. And looking at like our insurance renewal. Which is why we had to move to this ICRA, which I think is actually benefiting people in the long run. Our insurance proposal was 103.85% increase. Yeah, more than double insurance premiums. And it actually, I said, we have 4 babies and we've had cancer and things like that. For our mod and our performance over the last 2 years, it's actually been healthier than what we've seen in the past.
So they weren't just trying to perhaps give us an incentive to go elsewhere.
They were just like, well, this is what it's going to be. The negotiation, it was amazing. They could get it all the way down to a 35% increase if we promised not to do the market, or to go to market to find anything. I'm like, well, the 35% might as well be the 100% because that's how do we we're not passing that on to our employees, and you have a high deductible. So interesting turn of events where we now have some employees that don't have any insurance premiums because of just the way that the marketplace works now. And we have some that signed one up on Friday. She has a $700 deductible. She's 41, she's single, she's relatively healthy, and she lives in the right zip code, and a $700 deductible plan, and she's not paying any premiums.
Yeah.
So I did not qualify for that one. But it, yeah, and it just, I don't know. I guess it's just the state of education and society in general,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Everybody's
society.
facing it, but
I've got a staff member too that her rent doubled. She can't stay there.
yeah. And there's not a lot of places for them to go.
Right.
Or you've got to pay a application fee. I've seen like up to $200, $250.
Yep.
And then you don't even get the place. Like we have,
Non-refundable.
I'm sure not here in our area, but there are people that are taking like 50 people's deposit and then not renting it to anybody and then reposting it the next month. And yeah. So if you have rental properties, great time to have some lowering of your costs. I'm sorry, I need you to stop trying to make money. Yeah, so that, I mean, that's pretty much it with, and you know, we're getting applicants, especially with the elementary positions, because we knew in advance, we've got a pretty good list already of new hires in that area. A lot of them have been our student teachers or people that we've gotten from our Start Tutoring program. So, but I think we only currently have one baby for this upcoming school year, so just one so far.
Have we received anything for the science or math? I know those are still fairly new, so.
They're new. Math, we've had at least one applicant. Science, I've got an interview tomorrow.
Nice. Good.
So, elementary, they're actually in interviews for a couple more this year, or this week, and they are in the demonstration teaching part of it, because at summer school we can actually bring candidates in to do a demo with kids and see how they kind of react and all that. So they're in that. Same with CAP instructors. I think for the director of SPED position, which is currently posted, I think I have 7 or 8 applicants to go through. So,
That's good.
and a couple of those applicants are actually blasts from the past, former APA people wanting to come back. So,
That's good.
well, I don't know who you like. That's an interesting list sometimes. It might be.
Yes, all of them.
I think all of them, yes. One of them's like way old school. So I think old school, middle school social studies. I think it's social studies, yeah. So
She's like,
we'll talk.
Okay.
But yeah, so we are getting applicants, which is great. And we're getting pretty high quality applicants, right? We've got our new secondary school counselor, so we're back to
3
total.
Three
Yep.
total.
And Cassie, who is our new hire, she's going to be fantastic.
And one of those, I think you were telling us, maybe Saturday, or somewhere, that they have a lot of mental health counseling experience, so they can sort of almost double
Yeah.
in what they're providing.
So our elementary counselor is full mental health counselor, and our secondary, her bachelor's is in psychology and counseling, and so then she got her master's in school counseling. And from a procedural thing, she actually trained last week with Richard Thompson, another blast from the past
Yeah,
that we've brought
Richard,
back
yep.
for the last 2 months or so to help, and he's gonna help her transition with all the Skyward and scheduling and all that. So we brought in a ringer to get that fixed. I don't feel like spending another July the way I did last year.
yes.
Agree.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah,
No, agree.
we're actually all scheduled already, so. Know your resources.
I thought that was a good discussion.
Yeah. Any other discussions?
Yeah, any other questions about my fun stuff?
All right, so we have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, moving right along.
Okay, let's see, we'll plunge
Dave's up.
into our treasurer's report here. I think everybody has a copy of, I call it my script or my notes. You'll notice, starting at the top here, I have shrunk some of the numbers there, so they're very small, so you can just barely read them. That isn't to present a greater challenge than what we normally have in trying to interpret what our financial results are really telling us here. But I think we have spent a lot of time this year on educating ourselves on transfer entries, and I like to use the word distortions that sort of distort your budget. Variance analysis can give false impressions. I've lately been using the term red herring versus something that is a legitimate red flag that the board really needs to know and wants to know and pursue. So that means we'll just kind of skip over that. And then the first big number that you see is called ending cash balance. And I think that may be the most important metric that we have, perhaps one of the most. And as I have the little review I send out a couple days ahead of the meeting, what we do first is we take a look at our projected year end. Last month, you'll notice that we were projecting a cash net income of $186,127. And that was quite a relief because most of the year we've been in the area of about $450,000 cash loss, which basically was just caused by a mismatch in grant receipts versus spending. So we were quite happy to see that we had gotten into positive territory. Now, you'll notice then that we've updated that for projected using actual results through the end of April. And we've slipped a little bit here, which we'll explore in a minute, to about $116,000 cash loss for the year. And that will, if that holds, that will pull our ending cash balance down from 1.1 million down to 800 and rounded up 815,000. Now, again, if this holds, that's a very good number historically. That would be a little bit above what I call the historic average, which may be around 700 to 800,000. So that's still very good. And then, of course, we have already learned that because of these various mismatches, and I still have those highlighted here just to refresh our memories. I've got it in bold print still. We have several mismatched situations. For example, our results for this year are going to look very good. And a lot of that is due, of course, to the fact that we did receive the $519,000 charter school facilities grant, and $519,954. And of course, I think all or most will be spent next year. And then, of course, as every CEO report goes over, just to refresh our memories here, we have those items that where we received the money or we had it as a budgeted capital expenditure last year, and we got the money, but we spent it this year, and that's, of course, our bus, bleachers, and computers. So $416,000. So unfortunately, trying to make budget, comparing the original budget from May of 2023 with our results, income is quite a bit better, and expenses appear to be quite out of whack, but we know that's not true. So hopefully, I think that the board has gotten a very good education on how to do budget analysis and variance and how to interpret all of these entries that have to be made for sure. So that's what we're looking at, a cash loss of about $116,000 right now, but a very strong cash balance for the end of the year going into next. Let's see, our usual stats that we try to follow, which is below the bold print there with the mismatched transactions. Our debt service coverage ratio, you'll notice that's taken a big jump. We're required 1.25 times, and we were 1.38 last month, and we're at 2.3 with 2 months to go. Now, as we've stated often, those are based not on our cash flow or cash budget results, but our accruals, and we do not try to forecast that. So I think that we should not have a problem with that, but one never rests easy until June. Make sure we don't have 3 payrolls or something in June, something quirky like that.
Don't forget there.
Substitute expense, I think we're going to come in maybe right under budget. We right now are projecting about $118,000, and we had budget $119,000, so looks like we may be pretty close on that. And this net health insurance for this year is $537,046. And last month, I think that was 72% of what our May 23 original budget was. And it's increased a little bit to 75%, and that would represent roughly about $179,000, kind of like a built-in budget buffer. And I don't think we're going to be quoting that stat in the next year, because with being in the marketplace, our totals are going to be lower. And that may be one we don't have to use much anymore. And maybe not. We'll see. Okay, now let's see. Let's skip our monthly results here, and we'll go down to, I tried to keep the comments at a minimum, mostly because I couldn't get through my sheet here without getting myself confused with all the complicated detail. So anyhow, we'll see how I do here. I like this so well, I just repeated the sentence that I had in my pre-meeting report. Basically, if you want to sum up the changes in our projected year-end results, you had a combination. You had a $183,419 drop in total income, and you had $118,496 increase in total expenses. So you combine the two, and that is enough to take you from $186,000 loss down to about $116,000. And of course, as we've already stated, we're certainly, our costs are higher than the original budget. That is true. But our income is much higher as well. And let's see here. Of course, we've already stated that much of our excellent performance income-wise for this year is due to the fact that we got the full $519,000 in April. And of course, we know that all of our grants over a period of time will be spent with nothing left. So I think we have, as a board, learned that you have to sort of take a longer range look, because the only money, I've been saying it often recently, but really the only money other than donations that we get to keep is what we don't spend from our state tuition for the most part. Let's see. Now, the big question is, well, why are we at a loss now when we weren't last month? Okay, well, actually, it just came down to a few entries here, or accounts. First of all, total grants were down from our last board meeting about 5%. And that was $168,501. So that offset the receipt of the $519,000 facility grant. And the title grants, which of course is mostly, the big one is Title I, the 2 and 4 are smaller, they were off about $128,241. And then also our matching safety grant, which I've always been a little perplexed. I know I keep bugging Jill with questions on how is that actually working. We did downgrade that from $75,000, which was what our budgeted figure was, down to what we think we will actually get in May, $26,627. So basically, you take those two together, and that is what caused that dip in our projected year in from last board meeting. So I'm not sure the title grants, those are all reimbursable grants. And so again, there's a lot of volatility, and it's kind of hard sometimes on a monthly basis to pinpoint why stuff is happening. I was reviewing this afternoon, and my last statement in that paragraph was, and total expense, TE, was 1.8% higher without mismatched grants. And I said, what in the world does that mean? I couldn't figure out what I had written there, so I did decide to go back and figure that one out. What I meant was that if you don't pay attention to the transfer entries, the budgeted total expense, the budget was, the unfavorable budget variance for expenses was $605,000. But we know that $416,000 of that was the mismatch, the bus, the bleachers, the computer purchases. So if you subtract that and say, well, how far off were we really from a true economic budget figure? In other words, we weren't on an overspending spree because it was about 1.8% over budget, or $188,182. And of course, we'd like to be break even or be cash generating, but that's why we do, in our defense, we do spend a lot of time learning how to properly interpret our numbers, because if you don't know and you're not careful, sometimes you can draw totally wrong conclusions about things. So that's what I meant on that one sentence there. Okay, well, let's go to monthly results then, and you can see the number there sort of in the middle. And I think this chart arrangement's a little hard for me to read anyhow, but it's first column is your total income, then total expense, and cash net income. And you compare the actual to the budget, and then your variance. And let's see, and then also we have a line for what April results on an accrual basis were. And then also, since we've just got 2 months remaining, I've thrown in what we are projecting here for the last 2 months of the year. And on the last column there, it says C&I's cash net income. If we had not received that facilities grant, the month of April would have been a negative $53,000, which, again, no one likes a loss, but cyclically speaking, we usually will only have a big cash generating bottom line maybe 5-6 months of the year, just because that's how the grants flow into us. So no surprise there. It was a little bit unusual, despite our great fortune of the receiving that 500, because let's call it 520,000, maybe rounded up here. Actually, the results were below budget. According to our budget, we could have done a little bit better than what we did, but I think that the actual cash net income for the month of April was $465,850, and budget was at $549,32. I think we're content with the $466 is pretty good, so we won't complain about that. And on accrual basis, they're showing $419,045. Sometimes your bottom line results are very close between accrual and cash basis, and sometimes they're totally opposite. It's all just a matter of timing. An accounting professor told me once that if you could extend you had a cash basis statement, an accrual basis statement. If you could extend those out for 20, 50 years, at the very end, they'd be equal. It's just all a matter of when you recognize the timing of your income and your expenses. So I think you understand things like that, it makes this mass of numbers we get maybe a little simpler to understand. So April was a very good month, and no surprise there. Let's see, my comments. What else do I want to say here? Well, total income is a little below budget, and most of that actually was that we were showing a receipt of safety grant money in the amount of about $21,000. Of course, we have not gotten any of that for the entire year, even though we did show some each month or most months. And of course, total expense was $54,000 over budget. Now, you say, well, now, why would that be? Well, actually, the reason that expenses for year ending are higher is the same as the month of April. It's what I call the red herring, the building improvements line. So actually, it's kind of a repeat between the year end and the monthly here. But the biggest reason why total expenses are up higher from last month and from the budget is the building improvements. Now, this is the last year for ESSER 3. But if these are all or mostly reimbursable ESSER expenses, I think it's a bit of a red herring because it creates an unfavorable variance. Looks like you're on a spending spree.
They are not.
They are not, okay. And that's
So
different then.
if you look at that building improvement, if you look at March and April together, that's the foundation.
Okay.
So that's
All right.
about 85,000.
And that's our money.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
our money.
that is
We're on the
our
hook
money.
for it.
Okay.
But we are working with some of our expenses, so like the computer refresh, we have found a new way to do that. And so we may be able to use that computer line of that hardware that we currently have budgeted for June for the 139 to offset part of that foundation thing. So working with the bank on that, but
Very good.
yeah, we have a new approach to our computer refresh.
Okay, so next year, we're going to have to take a different approach to the building improvements. With ESSER, most of it, I think, in that line, Bookkeeping Plus has told us was reimbursable, but it's
Yeah, most of it.
not any longer.
Well, I won't say most of it was, because with the building improvements, that's where we have some of our projects that we use the Charter Innovation Grant for.
Right, yes.
Most of our ESSER funds that have been spent during this fiscal year really are truly more towards supplies or salaries. So if you're looking like at line 188 in the cash flow, you'll see right there at the very beginning of the fiscal year where we were finishing up some of that train part, but the rest of it has all been our in-house projects.
Okay.
And again, the foundation surprise, that totals 83,180.
All right.
But hope's not a strategy, so we've already had the rest of the buildings checked out, that we aren't going to have any more surprise foundations.
Yes, yeah. You mentioned compensation, I think, also. I did notice that, let's see, for the month of April, instructional comp was $43,000 below budget. I assume that's good. And then, for some reason, our SG&A and our IT comp was out of whack or a little higher than budget. Not sure why. It's probably nothing. But again, it just illustrates that.
Reclass, so it's just coming out of one and going into another.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay. That's, I think, again, a case in point where if one just tries to analyze monthly results in a vacuum, it's almost futile, I think, because of,
Exactly.
yeah.
You just sort of have to look at year to date.
Yep. And then let me finish this up here. Looking ahead, then, we will have cash losses in May and June in the amounts of $108,000 and $223. That not unexpected there. And let's see, we hopefully will get that safety grant in May. Is that safe, you think?
So I would say if we get our distribution, it'll be in June.
Okay.
With the safety grant, we deal with Homeland Security and how their reporting goes. So you never fully know.
Yeah,
But also,
but we'll get it eventually.
we'll get it eventually. And the expenses, part of that, the expenses that we've had for the safety grant, we've not spent more than that 27 right now. So we're currently talking with Sonatrol, but those expenses probably will end up actually in July. So then we probably won't see that money until October.
Okay.
I'm guessing, but that's all going to end up on the next fiscal year.
Yep.
And we're going to see that with Title I, Title II. We probably will have fairly large reimbursements in the months of July and August.
Yes, we have had in past years, yeah.
Yeah, and we got a new allocation from Title I for this year, which is an amendment that is in process, which is about another $100,000. And so, but we have until September to spend
Spend it, okay.
But that'll help pay for some of our summer school and our jump start, as well as some of maybe our supplies or things like that. And that's why when we flip over to the budget, you'll see that a much larger increase in title than what we've been having in the past.
It's too bad we couldn't decree a 13-month year or something.
Make it so much
Drop
easier.
that extra column there in July can make a big difference in what it looks like.
It says,
So,
but
and the
it sets you
computers
up for
purchased
the
still in
future.
June, you think?
Yes.
Pretty sure.
But it is only about 43,000, I think.
So more of it, some of that will get spent next year then. Or no, it won't be
No, so
for what you were explaining earlier.
yeah, the new investment strategy basically is to do a refresh, a micro refresh and the staff refresh, but also to use, there's insurance programs now that they will regenerate after a couple of years and all that. So
Okay.
IT wanted to try the strategy, and I said, why not? We spend a lot of money on computers, so it'd be
And then
nice if
we can save
insurance
a buck.
covered all that, and we could
Yes.
just make them last.
And let's see, we get the high ability, early intervention, and literary grants in June. Those three would be about 57. I think that's the only time in the year we get those. So we've got that to look forward to. And to close here, I did pose an interesting question, just as you had one from the CEO report on the sophomore class. If the facilities grant was not in the original May 23 budget, which it wasn't because the General Assembly hadn't even started talking about it yet, why does both April on our big cash flow spreadsheet, actual and budget show $519,951? In other words, it shows that it is in budget. Well, the answer to that is the budget never changes, and that's over here in the last column. And however, what remains of the year that we have not incurred yet, we do make changes to reflect better information. So we'll have more accurate year-end projections. So again, that's a rolling forecast versus what is a budget comparison.
It was too.
Well, the budget's still like a here. It doesn't keep it legal for the budget. I got you.
That's all I've got, actually.
All right.
Some are thinking, well, that was plenty, that was too much almost, but hopefully that was fairly clear.
So I just want to make a couple things.
Sure, go right ahead.
You're talking about the statement on the indicators. That's why we always look at the 4-year average, because it should be high by the end of this year because we did receive that $520,000
That's right.
that's going to be used next year. And then the other thing, when you look at your ending cash, which you sort of touched on, you have to look at the fact that we received that 520 that we're not going to use. So you sort of have to take that out and see where you are compared to what we projected.
Right.
But then you have to add back in that 337 that we received last year.
Yes.
Because we've now spent that. So really our cash is going to be down about another 182,000 compared to the number that's showing. So really our ending cash will be down about 311,000. Because when we look at the budget,
So about
we're gonna see-
814 minus 311, you think?
it'd be about 311,000 lower than our budget.
Okay, I'll jot that down.
Because the difference
Oh,
between the 520 and the
okay,
337
you're talking
is
about, okay, for our the beginning cash for next budget year.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
beginning
yeah,
cash, there's going to be
okay.
$520,000, which is going to be used for next year's budget.
Yep,
And then we had $337,000 in the
Mhm.
beginning of this 23-24 budget. The difference between those two is $182,467 to be exact. But so there's a variance there. So you sort of have to add that 182 to the 127, which that's where you get the 311 decrease in cash to see the true decrease in cash to the current budget, because we are carrying that 520 over and we're using that. You'll see when we go
Yes.
to the budget.
that actually was a question I was going to pop on you guys later, because I had wondered about that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so we can finish this report, and then I can sort of explain that when we go over the budget. But I just want to put that out there, that your money for the bank or your indicators for the bank will be fine, but that's why we always want to look at the 4-year average.
Yes.
Because next year, if we don't get any other monies or any other grants that come towards the end of the year, then your indicators are going to be lower next year. So that's why you have to look at the 4-year average. And we are fine when we look at the 4-year average, because this is what happens with nonprofits. So it's not unusual that this year we look like we're doing great, but we got to remind next year that we're not
Not look so great.
as good,
Yeah.
potentially. So I just put that out there.
And you converse with our bankers, and they recognize the value of that 4-year average. So, yeah. Okay.
And if it comes lower, then I'm happy to explain it to them.
Well, let me put it like
We've had
this.
conversations
I'm very glad you're explaining this rather than me trying to explain it.
Yep. No, but I'm happy to when it comes to that. So this year we'll be fine.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
All right.
All right. So, looks like I need to get a motion to approve the financial report, or do we go with A and B first?
Yeah, I would just approve it all.
Okay. If I can have a motion
Okay,
to
is this
approve the
our-
financial report for our June meeting?
I make a motion to approve the financial
Oh, that's
report.
easy.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right, motion approved. All right. And we have old business is next. We have the final budget reading and
Ma'am?
approval.
Did we
Yep.
get the board report?
We combined. Yeah.
They were fine, okay.
Yep.
Do you want me to do the budget now?
Please.
Okay. So, as you know, last time we had a fairly significant, loss, which we normally always do on the first reading. Jill went back and did her little magic, and we worked with her and did everything. And one of the big things was the health insurance, because the last time we didn't really know what everyone was going to be doing and where we were with that. And that did have a fairly large impact as far as the decrease on our insurance. Sorry, I'm looking at my sheet and I can't find the difference where it went.
I know the feeling.
I'm sorry. Too many pieces of paper. Here we go. Okay. So our health insurance, based on what we say, was down about $178,000. But, just keep in mind, there's still a lot of moving parts with new people coming and going. So this is our best estimate at this time, but it very well could change. We just don't know the people we're going to be hiring, different things of what plans are going to do. So there is some variance there, but we tried to estimate as much as possible. We did add in some additional monies for $25,000 for salary negotiations, just to make sure that we're cushioned there. And then we had some expenses that we moved around. Our basic grant determined that it went up a little bit. and just a few things on some different grants. So, the overall effect, we were able to get that a number down. But the biggest thing that we talked about last time was we had that grant in there for the $520,000 for the charter school facility as receiving it. Technically, since we've received it, I put it in there as like a placeholder line, not in the totals, but then at the ending cash, we have the 520 carry forward. And so technically the budget, when you look at it as a whole, would be negative. But when you add that placeholder in there, it gives us $6,300. So basically, we're basically at a net neutral. But we talked about this last time that because we're carrying that cash over, that's the reason why it's negative. But there's nothing you can do about it because we received the money. You're going to take the money when they give it to you, obviously.
And
But we have to budget those expenses.
isn't there precedent for this too? Because in years past, I think we still have yes, there's a provision for a little color note there about carryover from prior years. We've always, now sometimes we don't present it or we have to kind of, squeeze it in the big spreadsheet here, but this is not a one-time new thing or new concept for us.
It's just a larger number.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I pointed out, because it's a larger number.
It is,
You're right.
yes, for
We have
sure.
it every year to some extent. And so it's nothing new. It's a bigger number, and sometimes that brings alarm to some people, but that's why I'm pointing it out.
Right.
It's not any different. It's just a larger number.
Yeah, because let's see, like Title
So there's nothing
I.
wrong with it.
Yeah, we have carry forward on Title I, although I think it's 15%. You have to spend 85% during the year.
Yeah, and because Title I, the way that it works, it goes up to September 15th, September 30th. So that's always going to get us in July,
Yeah.
August, September. But then some of that we're not going to see until October, November anyways as the income for the reimbursement. So
I think, and I'm not an accountant by trade, but I think we're on very safe footing here because again, if we don't spend the money, I believe we have the right to carry that forward.
Oh, right.
And show it, as
I
long as
feel
we
like it's
show it
good.
and explain
Not that I don't
it.
feel it's good. I just want to
And,
explain just so
yeah.
everyone understands and feels comfortable.
And
with
then
it.
that was what was leading to that question I was going to ask, because I got to thinking, well, we actually got it back here in April, and then what we're showing next year is that we got it again, but it's a wash because we spent it. And I thought, now, 814 then, because I think we've got a $6,000 net cash profit. So if let's say we ended the year at 814 cash and added a few thousand to that, I don't really believe that the ending cash balance would be 814 on June 30th, 2025, or would it? That was my question, because I was puzzling over that. And I think you sort of explained that it won't be quite that high.
And typically when we do the budget, we don't normally put in cash.
Yes.
As we carry that 814 over. And basically, I mean, if we spend it like it says it is, we will be, we'll end at cash would probably be about 300, because we've got 800 and take 500 away, plus or minus. It's going to be about $320,000.
For ending cash, June 30th, 2025? It will be that low on June 30th, 2025, 300.
Yeah.
Ooh, I guess that's what I was kind of puzzling about. I thought,
Yeah.
Okay. Is
So that's
that,
all we really have to, I mean, we've
Is
got
that not a
to, really
problem?
watch everything, but, I mean, the problem is a lot of times when you're coming up, we have this, I don't know, when we had other federal grants that we received, when you come off of ESSER grants or, the ARPA like we've had like many years ago, those federal grants, it's an adjustment to get things back into realm, and I mean, it takes the government, honestly, to where they get back in the grants and things like that, get back into where you start receiving those funds, and then it recoups itself. I mean, Jill's very well aware we obviously have to be very careful and with what we're doing, and as always, we are.
yeah, and they are actually calling this the COVID cliff. is what the U.S. Department of Ed and Indiana Department of Ed, they keep referencing it as that, which we've known is coming. So we have things built in here that allows us to have some flexibility. If you actually look, if you go into like our salaries or you go into our salary spreadsheet, there are people in there that aren't actually gonna be there. So, and that's, I do want to point out, because we mentioned the salary negotiation line. Right now we've got, I think, about 65,000 in there. And that is to allow for the fluctuation if we have right now a first year teacher and then we get, 10th year teacher, there is a different price there. Or, if we have like a retiring teacher go out, there's typically a $22,000 to $24,000 difference between a first year teacher and, a 20-year veteran. So that's why typically we have actually less in that salary negotiation line, but I wanted to put that up this year because, we just don't know kind of where we're at. Plus with the health insurance, because now it is individualized and is based off of age.
Group, yeah, you explained. That's why I think you said we had this long litany of changes, and I looked at that on the earlier drafts, and I thought, what are we doing, cutting everybody's salary just to have a, budgeted balance on paper there?
Yes, that's what I did.
And I thought, it's the
Absolutely.
insurance, yes.
Yeah, and that's the thing where if we have, because of the way the federal government and regulations go, if we have a 24-year-old that's single, our monthly contribution towards their premium is maxed out at $265 a month. If you get up into 41, which apparently is the age break on that, which is great, not putting any personal information out there, the employer contribution goes up to $447. But the trade-off is the premiums for a healthy 24-year-old that's single, they're going to be in the low 200s. For someone, let's say that's quasi-healthy 41-year-old, those are going to be higher, up into the 400s and things. So that's kind of where that fluctuation is, which makes it really hard to predict, because now I've got to start looking at them and saying, hi, I know I'm not supposed to legally ask you, and I'm not going to discriminate. I just need to know how much you're going to cost me for insurance so I can budget that. Thank you. So, it's added some interesting things to it. So we've got a little bit of buffer in there always. And, this is APA. We've really enjoyed the luxury of getting to pretend the last few years that we've got, lots of grant money to spend, and we can live, like the Joneses or, the Hamilton counties on some things. And we also know how to, scale it back, and that's why a lot of the things that we have purchased over the last several years are sustainable pieces. So if there's machinery like a 3D printer, we already have a service plan in there. So it's been being maintained and it is already paid for and built in, that will continue. Getting the track, right? Like that's a long-term, hopefully lasting thing. And that's just kind of where we're at with that, and we're good. Just a little leaner.
Well, I think
Smaller.
another point, and I made this to
Less
you, we did have a finance committee meeting, although, for many years I was the only finance committee guy, but
You were.
it's hard to get everybody's working mostly except me, I guess, and so, but we did meet. We did have a finance committee meeting on the budget, and let's see, I lost my train of thought again. I'm not sure what point I was leading to.
I think you're going to say it's been scarier in years past, and we're totally good for this upcoming year.
I think that's right. It may come to me in just a minute here. I don't know if this is just a function of age or if I've always been like this.
No
But
comment.
anyhow,
I want to say, I'm starting to forget some things there too, so. I think maybe it's ADHD. We're all being diagnosed with it right now, so.
let's see, one other question I did have. I think I understood that there was a little bit of a dispute as to what the correct dollar amount per ADM student was. And I think in the assumptions page, I saw they were close, but there were 3 different versions. Have we settled on that number yet?
We have,
30.
yeah. So we settled on the same enrollment, and then looking at the actual ADM, we went through the LSA projections, which is basically how the legislators budget what they predict we're going to have. And so that's kind of where we shored up in the number we ended up on. There's supposed to be an increase in SPED funding, and so there's going to be a larger amount there. There's going to be a slight increase in the ELL funding. It's still not even enough to fund an entire position. So that's a little frustrating, but they've also changed how they're doing kind of their CTE calculation and their honors grants. So, but that's pretty much what's built into the ADM figure you see there.
Okay. I remember the point I was getting ready to make. Yeah, as I told you during the Finance Committee meeting, I used to be a teacher, and I guess, I don't know, I guess by nature I tend to go in too much detail and lose track myself. The point I made to her was this is a management tool for us as a board in our oversight position to make sure that we're not spending beyond our means. And it is a tool. It's not an audited financial statement. So when we approve a budget, I think our tendency is to make it as realistic as we can and meaningful. In other words, we don't want to create a situation where we have these mismatches that just cause confusion and wrong impressions. So that was my response to the fact that basically I think the accrual term might be deferred revenue or something. In other words, or I don't know, public or private sector, they can throw anything and call it a reserve of some kind, get by with it, I guess. And the auditors have no problem with it because you've discussed this with them, I understand. But I think that I think it's good to remind ourselves and everybody that a budget is our tool to make sure that this ship stays afloat. And so therefore, I personally have no problem. We've had a precedent set. All parties that have been consulted seem to think it's good accounting. It's realistic. And if we don't spend these sums of money when we get them, then we have in the past, and we have every right to carry those forward. And still be vigilant. That's the name of the game. We want to keep that. I think that ending cash is maybe our most important measure, because if we get that too low, well, first of all, I remember the banker, I forget which one, we've had several, but we were walking out to the Payless parking lot, and I remember he told me, he said, now, this is a couple years ago, it's still under your tenure, but he said, now we've given you, every time you've asked us for a loan, we've given it to you. But he said, I think we've reached the point, because you guys are always buying new textbooks and computers every other year or something. He said, I think you guys need to get some of your skin in the game. And you can't get skin in the game if you don't have a pretty healthy cash balance. So that's one good reason that we do need to strive to, and I think that's been a worry that the board, all of us have had, that COVID hangover, because this board here mostly has been used to seeing $1 to $2 million cash on hand, and I think we've always had that nagging question: what's going to happen when that stops? Because we were not in a strong cash position right before COVID hit. In fact, we were in a very low one.
Yeah. Well, and I would say, as far as that, I think that may have been Ed, but we have made some of the, over the last several years, computer purchases and things just outright, like with Charter Innovation money. So that's, we'll go. Now they really want us to take all the loans possible.
Yes.
I like those interest rates too.
Yeah.
Not happening. So.
I think you've done an excellent job of matching the when to buy out of our own money versus when to borrow. I think we've done a very good job. Everyone has. We had an earlier board member many years ago that his philosophy, their philosophy was that I remember somebody said, well, how are we going to pay for this? And he said, well, we're just going to take it out of cash. He didn't believe in borrowing. So, anyhow,
Yeah. You know.
that was the good old days.
We gotta keep
A lot of people scratch their heads on that one, but anyhow.
I don't know that there's any more to present on it.
No, I think that's about it.
Yeah, you guys done a good job on explaining it, so.
Can I have a motion to approve the final 24-25 final budget reading?
I make a motion to approve the final budget reading.
I have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, budget approved.
Thank you. Hey, thanks.
Now we gotta live with
Hey.
it.
And I see Sandy
Live or
there. So
die.
hi, Sandy. Hi, Andrea.
Thank
See
you
you
so
guys.
much for joining
And
us.
Sandy, is Sandy back there in the
Yes,
corner?
yes.
Okay, there she
She's
is.
hiding
She's
there.
hiding.
She's here. See you later.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right, any new business?
No, ma'am, I have nothing.
Any other discussion?
Oh, I wanted to ask, I gotta use my earpiece here real quick. Are we coming up on an election cycle for the board, like to bring on new board members, or is that? when's that?
Not new board members. So the part that says in August that is about the elections, that's just for the officers. So that's
Yeah.
like the leadership positions.
Okay. I was just curious, since we had some engagement recently and things like that, I was wondering with people who may be interested in becoming more involved, if there was
Yeah.
what the next cycle was, because honestly, I've lost track. I think maybe it's about just 2 years out.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
because you guys each have a 4-year term, and they're
4-year?
staggered. Well, you don't
It
count.
used to be 3 years.
I know, but
you're
Sam made
stuck.
Sam
change
did,
it.
yes, that's
2018,
right.
it got changed.
And he left for Cincinnati.
He locked you in and then kicked out
Yeah.
himself. Yeah. So right now, the only because I know on the website it says the board officer elections, but that's just board leadership right now. Obviously, it's up to the board if they want to entertain any more interest or those things. But that's something that we need to look at in June and July as far as kind of which areas that we need to grow. And, I know Dave's like, hey, don't find a finance person. Eventually, he
Well, if
wants to
someone else
retire.
wants the job, no one has to try to replicate, and that's been a worry of mine, no one has to try to replicate what I've been doing. I just felt there was a need.
Oh, yeah.
And with the new board essentially coming in, we've never had enough education, everybody just sort of had to figure things out.
Yeah.
If they ever did figure it out, on their own.
Yeah, and I think we've progressed quite a bit, at least in my 9 years of how well.
But I'm willing to serve too. Whatever the board wants, fine with me. As long as I'm still breathing, I guess.
Hey, let's work on that. Keep you breathing. But-
Wasn't so sure
you're
about
stuck.
4 o'clock this morning when I emailed you guys.
Oh, I was a little nervous on that. Yeah, and that's really I know I've only had one person contact me. So if there would be interest, if you send them to Ryan, he'll probably send them to me to send out my stuff. But right now, as far as board positions, I don't know what you guys are looking for, but that's executive committee stuff. I don't even get a vote. Ex officio. I like that title sometimes so much. You?
All right.
Anything else?
Is that it?
That's it.
All right, so I need a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting now.
7:28?
Oh, good. We get to watch the FBI's tonight. All of them.
Ah. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, we are adjourned 7:28 for our